When you walk through life, sometimes it feels as though you're facing obstacles and challenges that seem to have no reason or rhyme. You may feel like you're standing alone, surrounded by people, but still isolated. And you may be asking yourself why you're not experiencing the same kind of success or happiness that others seem to enjoy. But what if I told you that your isolation, your times of being set apart, may not be a punishment, but rather a divine appointment? What if God has chosen you for something greater, something that requires a season of preparation, solitude, and strengthening before He brings you into the fullness of your destiny? You see, God has a way of working behind the scenes in ways we cannot always understand. When He isolates you, it's not because He's punishing you or that you've done something wrong. No, God isolates you because He's preparing you for something bigger than you could ever imagine. He's positioning you for a place where you can shine the brightest, impact the most people, and fulfill your God-given purpose. I think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph was a young man with a dream that one day he would rule over his family. He was chosen by God for something great. But that dream didn't come to fruition immediately. In fact, it looked like everything was going wrong. His brothers turned against him. They sold him into slavery. He was betrayed, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Yet throughout every setback, every betrayal, Joseph's faith remained strong. Why? Because he understood that when God chooses you, He has a plan. He's not just doing things at random. Even though Joseph couldn't see it at the time, every trial he faced was preparing him for the position of power and influence he would later hold in Egypt. There's something to be said about the people who are willing to keep their faith intact even when everything is falling apart. There's a purpose in the process. There's a reason why God isolates you in certain seasons. He needs you to understand that you can't rely on your own strength or understanding. You can't rely on the approval of others or the crowd. You have to learn to lean on Him, trust His timing, and know that He is working everything for your good, even when you can't see it with your natural eyes. God isolates you because He wants to shape your character. He wants to build your resilience, your endurance, and your trust in Him. In the isolation, He refines you like gold in a furnace. It's in the lonely seasons that you will hear God's voice the clearest. It's in the times of solitude that He will strengthen your faith and give you a deeper understanding of who you are and who He has called you to be. You see, there are some things that only come in the quiet times. There are lessons that only God can teach you when the noise of the world is turned down and you're alone with Him. When God isolates you, He's positioning you for promotion. It may not feel like it in the moment, but He's working on something behind the scenes. God doesn't waste time. Every second is precious. When He isolates you, He is preparing you for the next level of your destiny. Think about David. David was chosen by God to be king, but before he was crowned, he was tending sheep in the wilderness. He was isolated out of the public eye, but during that time, God was teaching him how to be a leader, how to trust in His strength, and how to rely on God for everything. David fought lions and bears while no one was watching. But those seemingly insignificant battles in isolation prepared him for the greatest battle of his life when he faced Goliath. And of course, we know the end of that story. God used David's isolation to prepare him for greatness. It's important to recognize that when God isolates you, it's not a time to become discouraged or to feel abandoned. It's a time to press in, to seek His face, and to believe that He is doing something in you that will bring glory to His name. Isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. It's an opportunity for God to mold you into the person He has called you to be. If you think about it, all the people in the Bible who were used by God in mighty ways had to go through a season of isolation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Jesus Himself spent 40 days in the wilderness fasting and praying before He began His ministry. And think about Paul. Before he became one of the greatest apostles, he spent years in the desert learning from God, being transformed from Saul the persecutor to Paul the preacher. When you're isolated, you may feel like you're missing out on opportunities. You may feel like you're being left behind while others are moving forward. But let me tell you, God is not finished with you yet. He's preparing you for something far beyond what you can see. You're not being overlooked. You're being equipped. Your time will come. Your season of isolation will lead to a season of elevation. The work that God is doing in you right now may not be visible to the world, but trust that it's laying the foundation for everything He has for you in the future. And when you step into that future, when you step into that place of promotion, you will look back on the isolation with gratitude. You will realize that it was in those quiet moments that God did His greatest work in you. You will see that the pain and the struggle, the loneliness and the waiting were all part of God's perfect plan for your life. It was all necessary to prepare you for what's ahead. God doesn't isolate you to hurt you. He isolates you to help you. He isolates you to transform you into a person who can carry the weight of His calling on your life. Think about how a caterpillar is isolated in a cocoon before it emerges as a butterfly. The isolation process is painful, but it's necessary for the transformation. Without that time of solitude, the caterpillar could never become what it was meant to be. And just like that, your time of isolation is preparing you for the beauty and the greatness that God has in store for you. There's a reason why you're facing what you're facing. There's a reason why you're walking through this season of loneliness, this season of being set apart. You are the chosen one. God has chosen you to carry something special. He has called you to make a difference in the world, and He's doing the work in you right now so that you're ready for that calling. Don't be discouraged by the isolation. Don't be disheartened by the fact that others may not understand what you're going through. You are in God's hands, and He is shaping you for something amazing. Trust the process. And when the time is right, when God has completed His work in you, He will open doors that no man can shut. He will bring you into a place of favor, a place of influence, a place of blessing, and you will step into the fullness of your purpose. But know that the isolation was part of the journey. It was part of what God had to do to get you to that place. If you're in a season of isolation right now, don't give up. Don't lose heart. Know that God is with you, and He is working in ways that you cannot yet understand. He is preparing you for something greater. You may not see it now, but in time, you will look back and realize that every moment of isolation was part of the divine plan that brought you to the place you were always meant to be. Keep trusting, keep believing, keep pressing forward. The best is yet to come. God has chosen you. He is isolating you for a reason. Embrace this season because it's setting you up for something extraordinary. You're being prepared for a future filled with greatness, a future where you will shine with the light of His glory. And when that day comes, you will see that your time of isolation was not a punishment, but a preparation for the purpose He has for you. Keep moving forward because the best is yet to come. The times of isolation that you may be facing are not moments of abandonment, but rather moments of divine preparation. God isolates you not to leave you alone, but to equip you for a greater purpose. He is working behind the scenes, molding and shaping you into the person you need to be to step into the destiny He has planned for you. Just as gold must go through the refining process, your isolation is refining your character, strengthening your faith, and positioning you for promotion. When God isolates you, He's not abandoning you. He's setting you apart for something extraordinary. It's in the quiet, solitary moments that He does some of His deepest work in your life. You may not see the results right away, but trust that every step you take in isolation is leading you closer to the fullness of God's calling on your life. You are chosen. You are being prepared for something greater than you can imagine. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation, don't be discouraged. Embrace this time because it's part of the divine process that will ultimately lead to the unfolding of your purpose. God is not finished with you yet. He's working in ways that are beyond your understanding, but know that He is preparing you for a future filled with greatness, influence, and purpose. Trust the journey because the best is yet to come.